What's going on, everybody? Offsetting Penalties Podcast, UFC 330 delivered. Amazing card. And of course, it culminated with Islam Makhachev and still, and not just your regular and still with Islam, because we've seen plenty of those over the years, but he has now broken Anderson Silva's record for the longest win streak in the UFC. Some serious conversations are being had right now. I see it on social media. Dana White was doing it in his press conference after the fights. Is Islam in the GOAT conversation? I'll talk about that a little bit. I want to break down this fight because Islam Ian Garry was a really high-level fight. A ton to talk about stylistically, kind of the game plan Ian Garry had coming in. Co-main event was actually okay. Mackenzie Dern with an amazing performance. The rest of the card was great. And of course, I want to finish this pod. They announced UFC 333 in Abu Dhabi. Amazing card, so I want to talk about those very briefly. And of course, in a couple months when the card comes up, I'll be here to break it down. But first things first, subscribe to the YouTube. You're here if you want to listen to me break down these fights, you want to hear me break down these fights week after week, then subscribe to the YouTube. Follow Instagram, TikTok. That's where you'll get the clips and the little updates. I just dropped short form content, like real exclusive. So most of my clips on the Instagram have been just clips from the podcast, but I did one for fantasy football specifically for Instagram and TikTok. So if you want to see some of that content, then please head over there, follow. It means the world. Okay, let's get to what we need to talk about here. So Islam Makhachev and still beats Ian Garry. It was 4-1 on two of the judges' scorecards, 3-2 on another judge's scorecard. I honestly didn't have an issue with the scorecards at all. I think it was arguably 2-2 going into round 5, but more than likely, and this ended up being the case, it was 3-1 on most judges' scorecards. Round 3 was, of course, Ian Garry's best round, the round that he really put some damage on Islam, landed a nice head kick. The body kicks were working for Ian Garry. Round 4 was kind of like the 50-50 round. Islam clearly had most of the control on the fence and whatnot, but while he was controlling Ian Garry on the fence, Garry was ripping some body shots and some uppercuts in close. Typically, that's not the best thing to do when a guy's trying to take you down, but it was clearly having an effect, and I think that's credit to Ian Garry and kind of the long arms that he has, being able to actually put power on those shots, because most of the time when guys get put up against the fence and they're trying to punch their way out of it, it never works, but it can work with this taller, rangier fighters like an Ian Garry. So what I really want to talk about most is the Ian Garry game plan, especially because Joe Rogan and Daniel Cormier were as clueless as they've ever been. But first, let's give Islam Makhachev his flowers. So Islam Makhachev, the tests have gotten harder and harder for the most part, especially up at welterweight, right? Because while Islam Makhachev doesn't have to cut the weight that he did when he fought at lightweight, he's fighting a lot bigger guys. In Jack Della Maddalena, that was an easy fight for Islam Makhachev. At no point was Islam Makhachev in much danger in that fight. And I do think, sorry to my JDM fans out there, JDM is not a tier 1 welterweight. I know he won the belt, but I think he won the belt considering the circumstances of the division at the time. I think this generation of welterweights, this new generation of welterweights, which includes Ian Garry, is much better than Jack Della Maddalena. And I'm talking Carlos Prates, Michael Morales. Both those guys have a claim to the throne to, fight for the belt next. But the tests have gotten harder for Islam Makhachev. And what he's been forced to do is win in different ways. And unfortunately at welterweight, when you're fighting guys who are bigger, guys who have more film to work off of, because every time you fight, that's another fight of film for your opponents to be able to break down. Every time Islam Makhachev has fought, it feels like it's harder and harder for him to get these dominant early finishes that we saw early in his lightweight reign, like we saw against Charles Oliveira. Of course, we saw the one in Alexander Volkanovski too. That was on short notice. We saw one against Moicano. That was short notice. But these fights in which he's not fighting short notice opponents, it's been more of a struggle. But that's not like to take anything away from Islam Makhachev, because he is fighting the best of the best, and he's not on this reign in 2 weak divisions. Like, he's doing this at lightweight and welterweight, which in my opinion are 2 of the strongest divisions in the UFC. Most people kind of consider lightweight unanimously the toughest division in the UFC. Featherweight has a claim to fame, but I really think especially now welterweight has a claim to that title as well. In Islam Makhachev, okay, maybe the wins aren't as dominant, right? And a lot of people were mad at Islam Makhachev for the victory over Jack Della Maddalena because of the nature of that fight. But when it comes down to it, if you're fighting these guys who have more film, so they know how to defend your submission attempts or whatnot on the ground, and they're harder to submit because they're just bigger, right? You're going to get a lot of these fights where it's more control time rather than Islam Makhachev getting the finishes that we've become accustomed with Islam. With that being said, it doesn't take anything away from these performances, because Islam Makhachev tonight fought Ian Garry, and this was Ian Garry on a good night. He said in his post-fight interview that this was the best camp of his life. He had all the motivation in the world coming in. It's a title shot. It's his first time at the title. He's talked a huge game ever since he got into the UFC about, I'm going to win the title. I'm the future of this division and whatnot. Ian Garry came in with about as much confidence as we've ever seen someone fight Islam Makhachev with. And Ian Garry fought a really good fight. He made mistakes, but Ian Garry came in with an unbelievable game plan, which I'll talk about shortly. Ian Garry came in with an unbelievable game plan. He came in, fought a really good fight. He had Islam hurt at times. He defended the takedowns very well. And yet we get to the end of the fight and it's Islam Makhachev won on 2 judges' scorecards 4-1. And that speaks to this guy's dominance, is that we are looking at the performances that Ian Garry's had. You can go back to Volkanovski won in that first title defense of lightweight. And we look at those and we say, whoa, those were close fights for Islam. But then you look at the judges' scorecards and they don't reflect it, because that's what the greats of the sport do. You can come in with the best game plan. You can come in and be the chosen one for the belt, the future of the division. But when you're this good, and Islam Makhachev is this good, it just doesn't matter. And that's what I got from this fight, is to me, this fight, and I was talking about it after the JDM fight back in November, but to me, this fight really told me I think Islam Makhachev is a top 3 fighter all time. Now, I'm in the camp that Jones shouldn't even be in that conversation because of the steroid usage. To me, it's Mighty Mouse, it's GSP, and I'm putting Islam there now, right? And I don't see how you can't. He's a double champ. He won in both weight classes. He's defended in both weight classes. In every single unique challenge that gets thrown his way, he handles it. And maybe he's not getting the dominant finishes anymore, but that's what's going to happen when you move up a weight class. I don't think people really fully understand how difficult it is, not just to move up a weight class, but to defend your belt at another weight class. We've seen this from UFC fighters before who have been double champs, right? Daniel Cormier is an example of this. Daniel Cormier went up, he won the heavyweight belt, but he didn't have a ton of prolonged success there. Granted, that was the end of DC's career and whatnot, but a lot of times these double champs and whatnot, they go up the weight class and maybe they win the belt, but it's harder to retain it. And I know we still have some fights that Islam Makhachev has to take care of before we say, oh, Islam Makhachev dominated welterweight. But so far, he's beaten 2 very, very, very good fighters, especially in Ian Garry, who obviously a ton of away from the octagon, right? A ton of drama with him, with the son and the wife and all that. But if you focus on Ian Garry, the fighter, Ian Garry, the fighter, is unbelievable. I think he doesn't get enough respect for how talented and how good he is. And Islam Makhachev just beat him 4 rounds to 1. So I have nothing but praise for Islam Makhachev in this fight. Were there moments? Of course, but there's always going to be moments when you're fighting hungrier fighters, younger fighters, better fighters, especially at a higher weight class. Now what I really want to talk about here is the Ian Garry game plan, because to me, what made Islam's win so impressive was the fact that he still won 4-1, and did it when Ian Garry had a brilliant game plan. So this broadcast team, a lot of the MMA community just cannot stand Joe Rogan and DC on color commentating. And honestly, I think Daniel Cormier is perfect for Islam Makhachev fights, because what Islam Makhachev does wrestling-wise, Daniel Cormier is so good with the analysis on it. But when it comes to the striking and game planning and stuff, sometimes it's very, very clear that Joe and DC don't really do a ton of film study coming into their fights. So what Islam Makhachev is really been so dominant doing, everyone knows the grappling, but how does he get guys on the mat? Because the thing about Islam that is just like unheard of is when he gets guys on the mat, it's one thing, but when he gets them in a body triangle or he gets them on their back against the octagon mat, Islam Makhachev is unstoppable. Like flat out, how many fights have we seen where Islam Makhachev gets a takedown early in a round and he either gets the guy with his back to the mat, or he gets a body triangle on the guy and he's on the back, and that's basically the round. Like Islam Makhachev is one of the few fighters I've ever seen where he gets top control, and it's basically like it's either he gets the finish or you get to the bell and you live to see another day. And he did that in round 5 against Ian Garry when he got the hooks in at the end and ended up winning that round. That could have been the round that decided the fight. Obviously, it didn't end up being that way. But Islam Makhachev has this innate ability to just, when he gets guys on the mat, they don't get up. They just frankly don't. The way he gets guys on the mat is chain wrestling along the fence. Islam Makhachev has great wrestling in general. But if you were to come up with a game plan as to how do I keep it so that my back is not on the mat and this guy does not take me down. You stay in the center of the octagon, right? Because as much movement as you can do, Islam Makhachev is so good at chain wrestling. He's so good at getting you on the fence that if you stay on the outside and move, it doesn't matter because he's that good. So the commentary team tonight was just for round after round, like, I don't understand. Why is Ian Garry just sitting in front of him? Well, okay, you want him to move, but if he's going to move in circle, he's got to get to the black line in the octagon. And if he does that, you're setting up the chain wrestling for Islam Makhachev. So Ian Garry really kind of staying firm in the middle of the octagon and basically just saying, I'm not going to let you push me up against the fence. You better get deep in a shot and push me back there yourself. And Ian Garry did an unbelievable job with that. So I thought the game plan was amazing. Round one, Islam Makhachev didn't take him down. It was control against the fence, but it wasn't a takedown. Round two, the only reason Ian Garry ended up getting kind of taken down, but really just Islam Makhachev gained top control, is because Islam Makhachev landed a nasty head kick that knocked him down, and then he pounced while Ian Garry was knocked down. So the only round that Islam Makhachev successfully shot on Ian Garry and took him down off it was round 5. And even the circumstances of that were a little weird because it wasn't a classic takedown. It was more like they were on the fence. Islam jumped on his back and used that to get the fight to the mat. He ended up getting his body triangle. That was the end of the fight there. So what makes Islam Makhachev so good is the chain wrestling against the fence. Ian Garry did an unbelievable job of negating that because when Islam was shooting most of this fight, it was while Ian Garry was in the center of the octagon, and it is a whole lot harder to chain wrestle when you're shooting from the center of the octagon rather than when you're shooting against guys who are circling along the fence line. So forget what Daniel Cormier said, forget what Joe Rogan said. Ian Garry's game plan of staying firm in the middle of the octagon was great because I know you not moving a lot kind of makes you a still target for Islam to shoot a takedown on, but you rather that than circling along the octagon fence and getting taken down like every single Islam Makhachev opponent ever has. So the Ian Garry game plan was brilliant. What I was worried about with Garry a little bit is he's such a kicker, but those calf kicks and those body kicks are so at risk of being taken down by wrestlers. They catch the kick, boom, you're on your back. Ian Garry's kicks are just so fast that Islam Makhachev didn't have a chance to do that. And Islam Makhachev's body, the right side of his body, had considerable damage because Ian Garry was ripping these body kicks that were so fast. Islam, even if he wanted to, couldn't have caught the kick and used it to make a takedown entry happen. So Ian Garry's game plan tonight, to me, was brilliant. The way you beat Islam Makhachev is you don't circle along the fence. You hold your ground in the center of the octagon and you force him to put together a hell of a takedown attempt, which he's capable of, but you force him to do that, and that wears out Islam Makhachev a whole lot more rather than if you're already on the fence and he's shooting the takedown. So I really thought the Ian Garry game plan tonight was awesome. But that speaks to Islam Makhachev's brilliance, is that Islam Makhachev, even against a guy who has such a good game plan and is so rangy and such a problem, you can still beat him 4-1. So I just cannot be give any more praise to Islam Makhachev than the rest of the world is. Then you have to start having two different conversations here, two very different conversations. One, is he in the GOAT conversation? Absolutely. I think he has to be. He broke Anderson Silva's record for longest win streak. He's not only won belts in 2 weight classes, but he's defended them in 2 weight classes, which is a rarity. John Jones, I guess, defended a belt at the 2nd weight class, but it was against old Stipe Miocic. Mighty Mouse, okay, maybe he doesn't really have that claim to fame with the double champ, but he was just so dominant in his division for a long time. GSP won the 2 belts, but he didn't defend his middleweight belt. He won it and then he retired again. So you kind of like, you're going through these GOATs and it's like Islam Makhachev, what he did is what a lot of these guys couldn't do. The thing people are going to use against Islam Makhachev, and even Dana White used it against him in the post-fight press conference, was, oh, but he has that one loss early in his career. I don't care, man. I really don't. Like, I know that being undefeated is this huge thing in MMA and whatnot and having that but would you rather, like I understand the reason Khabib retired and probably didn't ever have the chance to win a 2nd belt is because of like his father dying and he didn't want to fight anymore. So I understand that. But if you were to take the namesake out of it, and if you were to say fighter A and fighter B, and if you were to put Islam as fighter A and Khabib as fighter B, but you don't show pictures, you don't put their names or anything, most people are going to take Islam. Even if you're not 29-0, and even if you didn't have that one early loss, most people are going to take Islam's career because of the more defenses. He won the 2 belts, the longer win streak in the UFC. So I really don't want to hear any of the, oh, the one loss thing. I think Islam Makhachev absolutely deserves to be in the GOAT conversation. Is he unanimously the GOAT? No, and I think it's unfair to crown him the GOAT as long as he's fighting. I think that's a conversation that you have once he's retired, whenever that happens in the next few years. But for now, yes, he's very much in the GOAT conversation. And at least in my lifetime watching MMA, he's the single most dominant fighter I can ever recall watching. The second conversation, which is vastly different, is what's next for Islam Makhachev. Michael Morales weighed in as the backup fighter this week. Carlos Prates is coming off of a just completely dominant win over Jack Della Maddalena in Perth, in JDM's hometown. So those two things, those two fighters, both have a very, very strong stake to the next title shot. It feels wrong to make Michael Morales cut all that weight, because he has to cut a lot of it, to be the backup fighter and then not give him the title shot. But the argument is Carlos Prates' wins are better. Carlos Prates has beaten two former champions in two ways that neither of those guys have lost in the UFC, right? It's not like he just beat Leon Edwards and beat Jack Della Maddalena. He starched both of them, and he especially smoked Jack Della Maddalena more than we've ever seen. That was a complete beatdown of a former champ. So he's got two former champs on his resume. Morales doesn't have one. Morales' best win is Sean Brady, which no one's done Sean Brady like that. So that's a very strong stake. Is Sean Brady better than JDM and Leon? I would argue so, but you know, Sean Brady doesn't have that former champion title to his name. Both guys have strong cases. There's two ways to look at this. One, who is built to beat Islam better? And to me, it has been and it still is Michael Morales. Prates is maybe a top 3, top 5 favorite fighter of mine in the UFC, just the best Muay Thai in the UFC by far. But what Morales has is the size and the athleticism that Islam Makhachev has never dealt with, right? What Michael Morales also has is a judo background, which will certainly help. So what I really think would make Morales such a problem is the size and the athleticism, because Islam Makhachev has fought amazing strikers and whatnot, but it's the size and the athleticism that Michael Morales moves like a featherweight, but he's built like a middleweight, and he's fighting at 170, somewhere in the middle. It's a cheat code. It's unheard of. And yeah, he might be sloppy. I've heard a lot of people throw out oh, he's welterweight Francis Ngannou, and he kind of is, because the stuff that he throws isn't exactly clean or whatnot, but he's just so athletic that it works. And unlike some UFC fighters who have all the athleticism in the world, and it doesn't really work because they don't have refined skills, he has an amazing jab, he has an amazing calf kick, and he's a good game planner, because the way he came out against Sean Brady with that low stance, hips back, was brilliant. Game planning was brilliant. So Michael Morales, to me, is the harder fight for Islam Makhachev. Carlos Prates, to me, though, is the one who's more deserving, right? Just because he's been more active than Michael Morales, and he's got more like high-level wins than Michael Morales. Michael Morales was kind of beat a Gilbert Burns on the way out. He beat Neil Magny Neil Magny's not on the way out because he got a great win today, but he beat these guys who were kind of on their way out of the division's rankings, at least, right? Whereas maybe you could argue that for JDM and Leon with Prates and Jeff Neal with Prates, but with Prates, he's fought more recently, and those are two former champions. Whatever you want to say about Leon and JDM at this point in their careers, that's two former champions who had never been put out like that in the UFC. So who's more deserving? I think Prates. Who is the bigger problem for Islam Makhachev? I think Morales, just because of the size. But this is the problem, right? Is Islam Makhachev is becoming one of those fighters that seems unbeatable, and you just got to keep throwing different challenges at this guy until someone finds a way. And at this point, Machado, Garry, because of the size, because of the movement, because of the game planning and the fight IQ of him, felt like a potential guy who could like give Islam Makhachev that first loss in a very, very, very long time. But he didn't, right? He didn't. He tried and he did not. So who knows, right? Who knows? Michael Morales, we've never really seen on his back. We've never really seen him do the anti-grappling thing, but he's so big that maybe Makhachev has a hard time getting him there in the first place. Prates, we've seen get taken down a lot, and that could be an issue. But what both those guys have is they have fight-ending power from the first bell to the last. Whereas Ian Garry is not really a fight finisher. He's more of a game planner. He's more of a let me kind of pick my shots and kind of win my way to a points victory. Whereas Morales and Prates are fight finishers, which Ian Garry is not. So I'm not saying that Islam's going to lose to Morales or Prates, but what I'm saying is it's a unique challenge that we haven't seen Islam Makhachev deal with. High-level strikers with scary knockout power who are big, especially Morales. So it'll be interesting to see who's next. I hope for Prates it's him, but if you're anti-Islam, then you probably should hope it's Morales, because I do think Morales has a better shot against Islam with the judo background and whatnot. So a lot to take away from this fight. Brilliant game plan from Ian Garry. I thought he fought an unbelievable fight, did body to the damage, oblique kicks, the teep kicks. Like, it slowed down Islam Makhachev, but it feels like no matter what, no matter who Islam Makhachev fights, no matter what adversity he faces, he finds a way. And at this point, the only time he's lost in his UFC career was very, very, very early in his UFC career, and it was a knockout early in a fight, right? So at this point, we've seen no one come up with the game plan to beat him. Ian Garry had an amazing game plan, and it wasn't the game plan to beat him at all, right? It was an amazing game plan, but it still didn't work. So a lot to take away from this fight. I've talked about it for almost 20 minutes now, but that's how fascinating of a matchup it was for me. Okay, co-main event, Mackenzie Dern and Still. We had and Still ×2. I'll talk about this very shortly. I want to give Mackenzie Dern some credit. I really, really do, because I think it's easy to discredit her because she had those 2 losses pretty recently to Jessica Andrade and Amanda Lemos. It's pretty easy to discount her because her striking doesn't always look pretty. And it's pretty easy to discount her because the MMA fan base is more concerned about the way she looks rather than the way she fights, which, okay. But with Mackenzie Dern, we've seen her continually get better throughout her UFC career. The striking has gotten better from the opening seconds of this fight till about the end of the 4th, because the 5th round was Jillian Robertson's, but Mackenzie Dern would just look like the all-round better fighter in every phase of the game than Jillian Robertson. And a lot of people were picking Jillian Robertson to win this because she's got more submissions than Mackenzie Dern, and she's got more finishes than Mackenzie Dern. Obviously, Mackenzie Dern is one of the GOATs of women's jiu-jitsu, or at least the MMA community thinks of her that way. So I was thinking it would be a close fight, but when it came into it, it was just like Mackenzie Dern's better than Jillian Robertson everywhere. Because from round 1, Mackenzie Dern had more sting on her punches. Like, the thing about Jillian Robertson that was confusing to me here was like, she's always fought this way, but like Jillian Robertson talked a lot of shit coming into this fight, and Jillian Robertson came out and never wanted to throw anything with intention, right? And she fights like that in a lot of her fights. But I thought in this fight, title fight, you talked a lot this way. She's going to come out swinging a little more. She's going to come out trying to make a statement. And that just didn't happen in this fight. It felt like every punch she threw wasn't a fully committed punch, or every kick she threw wasn't a fully committed kick. It just felt like she was kind of throwing stuff out there to eventually find an opening to a takedown. And she got that in round 5, and she had her ground control in round 5. But Mackenzie Dern was like, I'm better than you on the feet. And then once she started tagging Jillian Robertson up, Jillian Robertson became, susceptible to that double leg. And Jillian Robertson this fight week was like, she doesn't really like shooting takedowns. She's kind of got a double leg and a hip throw, and that's it. And Jillian Robertson was like, she's going to pull guard on me. Well, no, because if you're getting tagged on the feet, of course that average double leg is going to be there. And it was in this fight. Mackenzie Dern was just better everywhere it went. Was it a flawless performance? No, obviously it wouldn't have been. It's not, because she didn't win 50-45. She let that last round slip. What this fight told me more than anything is I think we all know that the fight here is Mackenzie Dern versus Zhang Weili. And I think most people just think that this is Zhang Weili's belt that Dern is kind of keeping warm until she's back. But this fight showed me that I don't think Weili walks through Mackenzie Dern like we initially thought. Like, I really don't think so. I think Weili is an unbelievable fighter, but Mackenzie Dern showed well-roundedness in this fight, and that's always been how Zhang Weili has beat people. You want to grapple, I'm going to outstrike you. You want to strike and try to knock me out, kind of like Amanda Lemos did, I'm going to just grapple you and wrestle you and land a bunch of ground and pound. And in this fight, Mackenzie Dern showed the ability to do everything. When Mackenzie Dern got put on her back, she was chasing arm bars and leg locks and all these different submissions. It just felt like no matter what position, no matter where they were, Mackenzie Dern was better than Jillian Robertson. And Mackenzie Dern, we know jiu-jitsu is her strength. We all know this. But the fact that she looked as well-rounded as she did, not just in this fight, but also in the Virna Jandiroba fight in which she won the belt, makes me think that Zhang Weili doesn't walk through her like I initially thought. Now, does that mean I think Mackenzie Dern's going to beat Zhang Weili? I don't think so. What I think is before Mackenzie Dern fought Jillian Robertson tonight, if I had to guess the odds for a Dern-Weili fight, I would say Weili was like a 4-1 favorite. Now I would say Weili's like a 2-1 favorite. Like I could see the opening odds of that fight being like Zhang Weili minus 260, 275. So I think Mackenzie Dern showed a lot of people tonight a well-roundedness. She has sting on her punches. She's obviously so good jiu-jitsu-wise. Her wrestling looked good. And it just felt like no matter where Jillian Robertson went, she didn't stand a chance. And really, it just felt like, to me, Jillian Robertson was at a disadvantage strength-wise. She didn't have the power that Mackenzie Dern did. She didn't have the control time that Mackenzie Dern did. She couldn't keep Mackenzie Dern down outside of that 5th round in which Dern was probably a little more tired than she was earlier. So to me, if Jillian Robertson wants to come back and win a belt or whatnot, you got to put on some more muscle because you're a former 125er and you were like thoroughly like at a strength disadvantage in this fight and a power disadvantage in this fight. So you got to put on some muscle, be able to commit to your shots a little more on the feet and on the ground, be able to have some more ground control time or not be controlled as easily. I get it, Mackenzie Dern is world class on the ground, but I was a little disappointed in the way Jillian Robertson fought. I thought this was going to be a closer fight than it was. I did see a stat today that Jillian Robertson's opponents since she fought them have been 0-19, meaning her last like 5 opponents haven't won a fight since they fought her, meaning she has fought a lot of people on the way out, whether that's of the division or like Michelle Watterson, who retired not long after fighting Jillian Robertson. So, you know, I expected more, but nonetheless, amazing performance. Mackenzie Dern, just unbelievable. I was very impressed by how well-rounded her game looked. And I said the same thing 9 months ago when she fought Virna Jandiroba in Abu Dhabi last year. I said, like, Dern looked better on the feet than I was, thinking she would. But, of course, she's looking good on the feet against grapplers. What's going to happen when she fights a striker? Because, as we know, her issues, her losses, at least recently, Jessica Andrade, Amanda Lemos, have been those, like, really good strikers. Will Mackenzie Dern hold up against a Fatima Klein or a Zhang Weili, who are very competent on the feet and also very competent on the ground? Who knows? But it gives me a little more confidence in her, the fact that she's looked as well-rounded as she has the last 2 fights. When she does fight those well-rounded strawweight fighters like Zhang Weili, who knows if Zhang Weili even fights again at strawweight? Because as we know, sometimes when fighters bulk up to go up a division, like she did to fight Valentina Shevchenko, sometimes it doesn't always work out, and it's hard to remove that mass and get back down to that weight class that you were once at. So who knows if that fight ever happens? If it doesn't, maybe we're looking at Fatima Klein looking at a title shot, which would be cool because she is awesome. So nonetheless, Mackenzie Dern and still Islam and still. Let's talk about the rest of this card really quick. I'm going to go through these and then I want to talk UFC 333, of course, the fight announcements there. So Jalen Turner, I am so happy for this guy, man. I really am. I am so unbelievably happy for Jalen Turner. Jalen Turner was a guy who was battling a ton of demons. Like, he really just was. Like, I really felt for him because it felt like after the Moicano loss, after the Bobby Green loss, he just didn't want to really hurt guys. He kept second-guessing himself in the octagon. You listen to him talk, he's not like a very, like he's very soft-spoken. He's very religious. He's a nice guy. It's been cool to see since he came out of his little mini retirement. He's had 2 dominant wins over Edson Barbosa and now Cowboy Fernandez, who was much better than Barbosa at this stage in his career. 2 vicious knockouts. This one, he starched him just almost immediately. Cowboy Fernandez didn't land a single shot in that fight, it felt like just completely starched him. I'm very happy because Jalen Turner is a guy who was in the top 15 and never really got, like, starched by any means, right? Like, he lost to Dan Hooker when he was ranked. I'm sorry, these are ranked fights of Jalen Turner. He lost to Dan Hooker after, like, winning the first half of the fight, and Dan Hooker came back. And then he lost to Moicano after he could have put Moicano away. He just didn't want to follow up with ground and pound because he was kind of scared he was going to do the same thing he did to Bobby Green, where it was a late stoppage and he really hurt Bobby Green. So it was really cool to see him back. He's a really cool fighter. He's a really cool dude, and I'm very happy that he's back in the win column and got another win in a big way, 2 straight since his little mini retirement. Mansour Abdul Malik is disappointing, man, because he lost to Yusri Balgari, and that was, okay, you fought to a world-class kickboxer. You're undefeated in the UFC up until that point. I have no problem with undefeated fighters losing their first fight in the UFC because a lot of the time they need that to learn from it. it felt like he didn't learn anything from that fight. Because in this fight, it's the same issue. Mansour Abdulmalik has never fought an MMA fight where he was the inferior athlete. He's a former Division I wrestler. He is so explosive. You can tell every time he walks into the octagon, he is a better athlete than these guys he fights. But he relies so heavily on that he's yet to come up with a win over a big name. It feels like he's come short in back-to-back fights. He's gotten finished in back-to-back fights because he gets hurt, because there's just no refinement to his game. It's, I'm hoping to overwhelm you with my power, whether that's through grappling and ground and pound, whether that's through getting a knockout on the feet. He just does not seem refined in his skill. And everyone talks about him as a super hard worker, and he's so gifted. And I agree, he is so gifted, and maybe he is a hard worker, but at some point, the skills got to become refined, because you cannot rely on athleticism purely, athleticism and power to win you fights, especially as you start climbing the rankings, climbing the division. Dustin Stoltzfus is a very underrated fighter, but Mansour Abdulmalik had every athletic advantage coming into this, and he just got outclassed. Great win for Stoltzfus. I don't want to take anything away from him. That's just that's just how I feel about Abdulmalik. Very disappointing for a prospect. I don't want to talk about this, dude. What is the UFC doing setting up Edson Barboza this way, man? Like, that just makes no sense, man. That really, really bothers me, dude, that they would set Edson up this way. Retirement fight, I know he didn't really want to call it a retirement fight. That's why he didn't get a retirement video afterwards and stuff. But you're giving him a young killer. You can see he was a 5-1 under, or Ribovics was a 7-1 favorite coming in this fight. Ribovics is so good. Limited fighter, I do think, but just sucks. I hate to see Edson Barboza go out that way, but I'm glad he retired. This was overdue by a year or two, so what a career for an absolute legend of the game, one of the best kickers ever in the UFC. I mean, his spinning wheel kick is one of the greatest knockouts ever in any combat sport, so unbelievable career, but just sucks to see him go out that way. The crowd was booing the shit out of Chidi Njokuani and Joel Alvarez. I was disappointed in the way this fight went. Just because of the fact that Alvarez is such an action guy, right? Like, he doesn't really go to decisions very often. He's got so many finishes to his name. And it felt like the entire fight he wanted to stand in front of Chidi and not throw much. With that being said, I thought it was a Chidi Njokuani masterclass of Muay Thai. And people were booing him, and people were unhappy with how the fight went. But that is Muay Thai 101. He was chopping the leg down. He was teeping Joel Alvarez's body, and Alvarez was just kept eating shots, not to the head necessarily, but to the body, to the legs, where he was just hesitant in front of Njokuani, and he didn't want to give any offense. Now, I'm not using that to excuse Alvarez. I think he should have been more committed to his shots, and I think he should have put more out there, but Chidi Njokuani just broke him down meticulously throughout the fight, landed shots, landed volume, a lot to the leg, a lot to that the inner calf kick, and then he'd throw a left hand after it. Just really, really cool Muay Thai. Charles Johnson, give this guy some respect, man. His 4th or 5th fight already this year. Comes up with a Scottish twister. I didn't even know there was one of these earlier this year. Unreal to pull that off. Chapeline, obviously short notice. It was a catchweight and whatnot. Had his moments early in the fight. But give Charles Johnson some respect, man. He knocked out Josh Vann. He knocked out Lonnie Kavanaugh. He's just such a cool fighter. He's always game. He's active. He has his moments, and he's very far from perfect, but just active, really, really fun, high pace. Very, very cool to see him get a win like that and a bonus like that for a Scottish, like, that's unreal to be able to pull that off in that moment, especially when the fight was so hectic as it was. Dante Johnson, complete just annihilation, left hand down the pipe, put Makhachev out bad. He also elbowed the referee after, so he kind of got a double knockout. Dante Johnson's a really cool fighter. Another fighter who, former football player, similar to Abdulmalik. I think when we start to see some higher competition, it's not going to work, because to me, he relies solely on his athleticism and power, whereas other middleweights, and it sounds like he might even drop down to welterweight, will not, and they'll be more refined. So another guy who I think is fun for the time being, but I need to see the skills refined before I can really crown you as like a scary threat at this division. Sounded like he was talking about he doesn't cut weight for 185. I think he could easily do 170. It maybe be a problem there, but speed could be an advantage, skills could be a disadvantage, I should say. So I do not know. Trisha Gore, who lost some teeth, wild from a flying knee towards the end of the fight, I believe, with a fun performance over Vicente Luque. Trishan Gore is a guy who, he had his hiccups early, but I see him continually improving. His game looks a lot sharper. He's got power. He's got some nasty guillotines and submissions. He had Luque deep in an arm triangle, just like Luque had him deep in a Darce, so props to him for not tapping to Luque when that's like Luque's thing, is the Darce choke. So Trishan Gore, really, really cool fighter. Let's talk about this Lucas Fernandez guy. Holy crap. I'll be honest, maybe I'm a casual. Like I'd only heard of him because he was an LFA champion. I hadn't ever watched any film of this guy, any fights of this guy. Whoa, fast, sharp, attacks the legs, the body, and I get it. Tobias is not like crazy competition, but just dismantled him from round one. He was patient. Like, this is a serious player at 205, like serious. And I loved watching this guy fight. It was just a sharp, striking style. He just broke him down throughout the fight. It ended up being just a crushing knee to the body that ended up doing it, because Tobias was so tough. He was eating everything. So that's what they say. You go to the body. Neil Magny, hell of a performance. He's still doing it. Ends up getting the TKO. And then Jeremiah Wells. To me, the coolest thing of the night, the coolest story of the night was Jeremiah Wells. So obviously Oralby, I love Oralby. We all love Oralby. He has some holes in his game, and I hope he uses this loss to fix them. Oralby was up 2-0 on the scorecards. Jeremiah Wells, the only Philly guy on this card. Stoltzfus is a Pennsylvania guy, but Jeremiah Wells, the only Philly guy on this card, 39 years old, massive underdog. Oralby was a 12-1 favorite coming into this. This was the fourth biggest underdog win in UFC history. Comes out, hurts Oralby, lands a nasty, nasty guillotine, ninja choke type thing. Unbelievable, puts Oralby out to sleep. Just as cool of a story as you can get. 39 years old, the only Philly guy. His son's graduating from the Air Force in a week or so. Gets a win. Sound like maybe he was retiring now. Sounds like he's not afterwards. I don't want to focus on that. I want to focus on just how cool of a story. Being the only Philly guy on the Philly card to end up getting a win. It was truly, truly spectacular. UFC 330. I hate this, man. I hate this. That we saw this with UFC Serbia a couple weeks ago. We see this with Philly. Is the UFC has put together some underwhelming cards in terms of like the matches when coming into it. Now, this card, we knew, and I knew coming in, that there was going to be a lot of action, because even though there wasn't many ranked, the only ranked fights were the main and co-main, but obviously the other fights were built for cool finishes, really, really good fights, and it delivered. The UFC, man, I don't want to glaze them. I also don't want to like be too critical of them. Like, they're putting together cards that just don't have high profile matchups. The Serbia card, the Philly card, these are two cities you've either never been to or you haven't been to in a long, long time. And you're giving them kind of underwhelming cards coming into it. Not really many high stakes fights, but they just keep delivering, man. There's more finishes this year than we've ever seen in the UFC year ever up until this point. Of course, obviously there's a few more months to go. Just unbelievable. The UFC, these cards have been on fire as of recently. Paramount era started a little weak and whatnot, but the cards have been on fire. Philly crowd was amazing, as we knew it would be. Every time they go to new cities, the crowds deliver, so I'm sick of them going to Abu Dhabi every year and Vegas 5 times a year, plus all the Apex cards. Like, go to new cities because the crowds are electric. They're going to Sacramento this week. I'll be in the building. I'm so excited for that. And that'll be a crowd that hasn't gotten a card since 2019, so that will be amazing. I know I was just talking down on Abu Dhabi and stuff, but let's talk about this Abu Dhabi card because it's spectacular. So they announced this during the broadcast. 2 title fights, stacked card. Volkanovski, my favorite fighter in the UFC. Volk is back. He's defending his belt against Movsar Evloev. Undefeated, not a finisher at all, but very, very rightfully deserved a title shot just based on the wins. Whether he deserved the wins, whether he robbed a couple people, whether the wins were finishes or whatnot. At this point, when you win that many fights in a row, you're undefeated. You got to fight for a title at some point. He gets a little bit of a home game fighting in Abu Dhabi against Volkanovski. Petr Yan, Merab Dvalishvili, their third fight, their trilogy fight in the co-main event. Yan is obviously the champion this time around. They're 1-1, so this will kind of be the grudge match. The first fight was amazing. Merab did that fight, you know, like after having beat Corey Sandhagen a couple months. That was his 4th fight in a calendar year. So now he gets some time off to go and beat Petr Yan. Very, very excited for that one, of course. Loney Kavanaugh, who just lost to Brandon Royval, but very, very close, fun, competitive fight. He's fighting Ramazan Tamirov, who is, of course, just a tank at 125, just knocked out Steve Erceg just brutally, also in Abu Dhabi, so he gets a second straight fight in Abu Dhabi. Alexander Volkov versus Kuniev, Russia versus Russia. This time it's Moscow, Russia versus Dagestan, Russia. Really, really fun fight. Kuniev, they're giving him a jump up. He also just fought in this last Abu Dhabi card. They're giving him a jump up, and if he wins this, then maybe we're talking Kuniev is next for the heavyweight belt, although, you know, obviously Pereira's there, Hoket's there, and whatnot. Arnold Allen, Aaron Pico, banger. I wish they'd give Arnold Allen someone ranked above him or someone ranked close to him, because they keep giving him these prospects. He lost to John Silva. Most people lose to John Silva because John Silva's very good. Then he beats Melky Costa very handedly in a main event. Now he's fighting Aaron Pico, who's a killer, of course. Very, very fun fight there. Dominic Reyes, Azamat Murzakanov. Worry about Reyes' chin with that one, but obviously Murzakanov is coming off of a pretty brutal KO loss, his first loss ever as an MMA fighter to Paulo Costa, so we'll see how he responds from that. Abus Magomedov, who is currently sitting in the rankings. I'm not sure if these are the meta AI or the actual rankings, but he's fighting Cam Rouston, a city kickboxing guy who has been undefeated in the UFC. Very, very fun fighter. Krylov's taking on Rakhman Yakyayev, who is one of the most exciting prospects in the UFC, so he's getting a shot at the rankings. And Narulo Aliyev, I never know how to say this guy's last name. He's fighting Grant Dawson. That will probably be a snoozer. That is a whole lot of grappling. That deserves to be on the prelims. But high-level fight, just a lot of grappling and whatnot. So UFC 333, very, very excited for this. Obviously, October 24th. We still have 2 numbered cards until then. LA on September 19th. That'll be Josh Van Pantoja. Hopefully I'm in the building for that one. And then I think October 4th, maybe the 2nd, early October, first week of October, they're going to Salt Lake City, UFC 332. We still do not have a fight announcement. I was expecting, and it was rumored it was going to be Petr Yan versus Merab Dvalishvili for that card. It hasn't been, right? Obviously, that's the co-main event on this one. Kind of wondering what they'll do for that. Is that going to be Kayla versus Amanda? Is that going to serve as the main event? I've heard rumors of doing an interim light heavyweight belt, and I've heard like Yuri Costa. I love Yuri. I don't know if he deserves another shot at the belt coming off of that just horrific loss last time out. So I don't know. But regardless, a lot of fun stuff in the horizon. My voice. I'm losing my voice here. So UFC 330 tonight. Amazing. Islami and Garry I could talk about for another 30 minutes, just game plan wise and whatnot. It was a spectacular fight, high level fight. I kind of thought it might be a snoozer coming in. I thought it was going to be a lot of round 1, which was Ian Garry's good enough to defend the takedowns, but not good enough to get off the fence. Turns out we ended up getting a cool fight. We got a knockdown in round 2. We got an amazing win, and still in Islam Makhachev is now in the GOAT conversation. So very, very fun card. I was very, 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 very happy the way it turned out, really. I think Dern and Islam are 2 good champions for the sport. I wish they were a little more active, but 2 dominant performances nonetheless, and Ian Garry will be back. He's young, and he's very, very confident, unfortunately, but yeah, guys, so UFC 330, that's it. That's all I've got for you. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you aren't already. If you're on Spotify, I appreciate you. Not that I get basically anyone listening on Spotify, but if you're here, stand up. I appreciate you as always. More content coming. Obviously, NFL season a couple weeks away, so more fantasy football content and whatnot. Next week, UFC Sacramento. If I get home in time, if I'm feeling up to it, I will react to the card because I'll obviously have been in the building for that, and hopefully I won't have to hear Joe Rogan and DC probably won't be on commentary for that fight anyways, but Anthony Hernandez, Gregory RoboCop Rodriguez in the main event. Very, very fun card, a lot of action-packed fights. Very, very excited for that. I'll be in the building for that. If I'm too tired afterwards, I know I got to go drive back to school not long after that. Then I won't do a pod of that, but a lot of exciting stuff on the way. Of course, offsetting penalties to the moon. I appreciate everyone. If you're here to the end, you're a cycle, but I love you. Happy UFC 30 night. Celebrate if you put some money on Islam and Dern. If not, go get yourself a beer anyways. I appreciate everyone. I'll see you later.